And hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show. And today I am joined by Lynn and to talk about fantastic findings. Since as it is October, it's basically Christmas time.
Yeah, almost.
So before we get into that, we're going to play a rousing game of Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls. It's we Which base how it works is I'm going to list three names and you are going to guess if it is either a monster from Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls. Okay. So let's see if I can find some sufficiently silly names. Uh, who? Uh, is the audio working? I am professional, I swear. But yes, we'll start with the first one. Black Rose Dragon, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
Oh man, it's like two franchises I'm not super familiar with. I'd say Yu-Gi-Oh. It sounds like something out of Yu-Gi-Oh.
That is correct. It is indeed a Yu-Gi-Oh monster. Let's see. And next is let's see. Uh, Let's see. Seath the Scaleless, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
Probably Dark Souls. I reckon.
That is true. It's a boss from the first Dark Souls game. And let's see. The last one for this round. Hundred Eyes Dragon, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
I'd probably say Yu-Gi-Oh again.
That is correct. It is from Yu-Gi-Oh. Anyway, and now that we're done stalling, I mean playing a fun game. Uh,
Hey, I learned three new things, so you know, it's
so we will. How about we Lynn, how about you start by introducing yourself to all of my fives of listener listening at home?
sure. Um, yeah, my name is Line, and I live in Denmark. And for the past 4 years, I have been working on my game called Fantastic Findings in my spare time. So that means after my full time job, I've been crunching on this game almost every day, um, and a little bit on off, and that's sort of the product of my labor. So I'm a hobbyist, a part time game developer, you could say, and the game is releasing in the end of November. So I'm looking forward to that. It's the first sort of major project I've I've come to sort of finish of this size. So yeah, I'm quite excited about that.
Okay, and when did you first discover video games just in general?
I think it was when I was around 5 or 6. My parents brought home a Windows computer, Windows 3.1, and it came with a bunch of games. So yeah, and that was, I guess, a smash hit from the get go. And then as games began progressing with, like, I remember Warcraft 2 and Heroes of Might and Magic came with like level editors that I just spent so many hours on. Um, So at that point, I didn't think it was like something you could do for a living or something, which granted, I'm not doing it for a living. but uh, but yeah, I've always been super creative in games, and so that's kind of the whole thing how it got started.
Okay. And what would you say was your favorite game and or games growing up?
I think my favorite games growing up is definitely the Heroes of Might and Magic franchise and the Warcraft franchise. Probably a little bit of StarCraft as well, but mainly those games. And it's still probably the only sort of games from my childhood that I still actively go back and play. Especially Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is I play that every year.
Okay, and what would you say is your favorite game and or games now?
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough one, really, because I've not played I've not played games in a long time. I think the only game I kind of dip into occasionally is World of Warcraft, which I still play 20 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit like for me, people go to football or the art club or whatever hobbies they have. I just join, you know, a group every Wednesday and we do some stuff, and yeah, that's my gaming hobby, I guess. Otherwise, I really enjoy a game called The Long Dark, but I've not played that a long time because I've just been way too busy with the development of my own game.
Okay, and if you were at a gaming convention and Fantastic Findings had a booth, what would be the elevator pitch you would give to anyone walking by?
So it's a 3D hidden object game. Obviously, it's very Christmas themed. You have to help some animals finding their lost things and help save Christmas. And you do that by explore a lot of varied and detailed levels um, with minor puzzle elements where you will find um, a bunch of unique quest items you need to find, and each most of the quest items do have a sort of a real life cultural reference, and then beyond that there are over 1,000 optional objects that you can pick up and collect in the game beyond the quest objectives.
Okay, and like where did the idea for like Fantastic Findings like come about?
I think it started with I wanted to learn C sharp, so I wanted to do a game where it matched my abilities to create. And um, so I didn't actually know what game I wanted to make when I first started it, but it very quickly began to pivot into something I knew it was going to be 3D, but then sort of hidden object where you could just basically click some items and they animate. Something happens whenever you do something with the mouse. That would be sort of the easiest thing to do. And then it sort of pivoted into um, some investigation, sort of very story based stuff. But that would be quite a large scope to do. To do sort of a detective game with a proper story and things like that. Uh, so I decided to take a step back, think about the scope a little bit again, and I thought of seasonal games. I've worked a little bit with Halloween. It's a bit of a more difficult theme, and also because of the timeline, so I just changed it to Christmas. So the first part of Fantastic Findings was basically Christmas, and that's kind of how it came about. I also wanted to make a game that my mother could play and that she would find enjoyable. And I think that also helps keeping the scope a bit low, not adding like complex puzzles or complex quick time events for people who are not used to playing games. So I wanted to sort of, I don't know, like reinvent the hidden object genre a little bit.
Okay. And I mean, you said it was because you wanted to make like a game that hypothetically your mother could play. Is there like any other reasoning that went into like making this like a hidden object game, or did you find it just to to be the easiest like type of game to make with what you had available to work with?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the boring answer is actually that it was what I was capable of doing, because I think on the front of it people don't see what's behind. And what's behind this game is that on my other attempt of making games, making a tower defense game was the game before this, where, for example, the duck, which is the main figure, Jingles the Yule duck, is he's the main character in the game, and
Mm-hmm.
he was actually just sort of a side character in like full armor and a spear in my tower defense game, and a bunch of the characters in Fantastic Findings are actually from my previous game that I
Oh.
didn't. It was just way too difficult, way too big scope, and everything else. Um, so it's sort of come around that I've been trying to make little things and bits and pieces, and then I've constantly sort of trying to adjust the scope in something where I know I can eventually release a game. So that's kind of how it came about. I also really like hidden object in books, in primarily books. I can't say I played many hidden object games on PC, um, and then you know I started finding a lot of inspiration from books and shows, and like Wallace and Gromit, for example, and we have these Scandinavian Christmas books, these Swedish Christmas books as well, that I've drawn inspiration from. So it seemed like once I started to develop on the concept, it seemed like okay, this is this is feasible. This is something where I can provide really good quality, and I can design a game around my strengths to actually finish something, not just finish something, but finish something in a pretty decent quality, I'd say.
Okay, and from its time as like the initial idea to the time when it's released, how long do you how long will it have taken, Fantastic Findings to like become a fully released game, would you say?
I'd say about 4 years. I think is where from the initial idea when I had my first script, my first little test level. Um, that was like right after COVID. Um, so I think that's around that time I started at least with the first assets and things I made specifically for this game. Then of course there have been periods where I've not worked on a game, like for 3 months or half a year, if like it's gotten busy in the job or I've just felt a bit burned out or something. But then in the past like 12, 13 months, I've been working on it every day, about 30 to 40 hours a week.
Okay, and like, did you like find it difficult because we see on like the Steam page that like, and as you've said earlier, like this is a game. It's a hidden object game, but there's like quite a lot of moving parts. Did you find it difficult to make like certain things interact with certain other things, like being able to just like bring the sort of complexity to the game that you wanted?
Yeah, I think there's certain parts where I had to ask for help and get some other people involved who, frankly, are more skilled than I am. So one of them is the save system in my game has been created by a colleague of mine from my day job, because I talk about this game all the time. So he came in and he's helped with that, and he's helped with a bunch of the infrastructure. So I've all the scripts I've made are like very small, self-containing scripts, and he helped me as well hooking this up into bigger interfaces where all these things, uh, you know, reference to each other and rely on each other. So it becomes more of a system than just stuff that's self-contained, and that has been really really helpful. And also in the past 9 or 10 months, my spouse has also uh, joined in and helped a lot with the art, and he also redid the camera system as well for the game because we started getting some feedback on it, and I was not really sure what to do with it. So I can't take all the credit myself. Like over the past year, I've had some help with some of the bigger, more complex tasks. So those technical things, where you think, okay, well, the basic gameplay loop is fairly simple, but as soon as something is like, okay, you have to save something, you have to unlock levels when certain things happen, is just it's a bit beyond me and my abilities at my current stage, but it's something that I've learned so much about now that probably for my next game I'll be able to set something up similar, but on my own.
Okay, and um, was it being like a Christmas themed game? Was that like always a part of it, or did you just decide at some point along the lines of development that, oh, Christmas would just be like would be a nice theme to give this?
I always, I've, I don't know. It might. The thing is, it sort of came out of the idea, obviously, with the I had this investigation game idea of some animals living in a town, and you had to investigate some murders. But it was very difficult to kind of convey and get it, get the concept right, I guess. Um, so I think I remember I got this. It's I got really inspired by uh, this GDC talk that was like, I don't know, 15 years ago. I don't know how long ago it is. Um, and it's the guy who's been part of making Forbidden Solitaire. I'm just looking up his name right now. So this Jake, the cat guy, I'm probably butchering his last name. I'm truly sorry, but he did a talk and he was like, I am the game developer who've made, I don't know, 30 game at the time and not had a single hit or something, or 40 games. I don't know how many games he did. And he did a lot of like seasonal games. And he did a lot of like, oh yeah, I did a Christmas game, I did an Easter game. And he's just, he's sort of a very realistic indie game developer, I think. And I think that's really inspired me. Be like, okay, well, if you want to make something small, if you want to make small games and ship more games instead of pulling in like, I don't know, 8 or 12 years in a single game that may or may not be successful, you can build up stuff with doing these small games, and especially looking at my skill sets and the fact I have to learn a lot as I go. Um, it was just quite inspiring, and I think it has been part of that decision of, okay, what would I do to reduce the scope. That would be to do something seasonal, because first I wanted to do Halloween, but Christmas was actually easier to work with. So that has been in the back of my mind, and it's been, I think, one of the few GDC talks that I've watched so many times, and it's like I would highly recommend everyone to watch it, because it's I think it's such a good starting point, and it's also such a good approach of trying to stay alive as an indie developer in an ever-changing market where suddenly one game is popular and the next day something different is popular, but then sticking to your guns and release many games, I think is uh, yeah, that's a huge inspiration, at least.
Okay. And like aside from the save feature you mentioned, is there like any other like aspect of the game that you found to be like more challenging than you thought you would before you started working on it?
I think the amount of time releasing it and sitting on a Steamworks and doing graphical assets and handling like the front lines of the game, so to speak. You know, getting the game out, uh, writing to content creators, and uh, learning how to actually release a game, going into Steam Next Fest, all of that has been much bigger, much more time consuming than I initially thought. Um, so that part was, I probably assumed it was simpler, but has been a much bigger chunk. I wouldn't say it's been sort of complex. It's just been, yeah, quite time consuming, and something that I'm happy as well. I learn to do now with this game, because I wouldn't have to spend so much time learning it the next time I release a game.
All right then. And what sort of advice would you want to give indie game developers that you wish you got when you first started working on your own game?
I think um, I think I'd say don't um, don't go too hard into the details. Don't begin polish until you have the whole game ready and you manage to figure out whether that game is within your skill set and abilities to do. You know, you want to figure out very soon, as early as you can, whether your project is feasible or whether it's way too ambitious. Because, for example, the tower defense game I was working on before this, way too ambitious, you know. But it did take me a few years to actually realize where I've been spending all the time making really nice artwork for it and hardly anything else of the code, because it was just way too big of a rabbit hole to dive into. So I'd say if people start out, don't be shy of making small games. Don't be shy of making simple games. Uh, you know, your first game doesn't have to be a huge success. Your first game can be a flop, but I think it depends on you know, you have to look at the success in a different way. I look at success as a learning. This is a huge learning opportunity for me. So sitting down and actually all the things I've learned is something I can take with me, which granted is probably more valuable than many things, and being able to actually release a game is much better than having a game and a project you've sunk so much time into that never becomes anything because maybe it is too ambitious. So and then my second advice is work on your game every day. Try and work on it every day, even if it's just for an hour. It's incredibly important to keep that ball rolling, because if you stop for 1 or 2 weeks working on your stuff, it's insanely hard to get back into it. So I think that's the main two things.
Okay. And like we know that Fantastic Findings has a Steam page, but like if everything goes as it should, are there any other platforms you very much would like to port the game to at some point down the road?
I have sent in an application for, or a request, or I don't know what you want to call it, for Good Old Games, and then I'm going to see if together with I want to make a Halloween update coming, and for that I want to see if I can get it on Epic Game Store when I'm publishing that part of the game, and then probably later down the line maybe itch.io, places like that. I had originally many years ago thought of putting it on Big Fish, but in the meantime they did stop to do third part publishing, so they are only self publishing now. And that's like my core, the core like player base is actually for me for this type of game is actually on Big Fish. So huge shame, but hopefully my game will reach a wider appeal on Steam So yeah, that's hopefully many people who've never played hidden object games are gonna pick this game up.
Okay. And I think with that, we can, bring this episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast to a close. I would like to thank Leni for coming onto the show and talking about her game. And yes, if a Christmas themed hidden object game sounds interesting, like to anyone who's listening, go check it out on Steam, wishlist it, play the demo, all that good stuff, and get ready for when it does come out fully. And yeah, is there anything else you would like to plug and promote before we sign off?
No, I think I'll just say thank you for having me on, and if you're struggling getting into the Christmas mood this year, check out my game. The demo is also available, so if you don't want to commit to buying the game or you want to play it already now, the demo is going to stay up until into this sometime into December. So there's still a huge opportunity to play it and try it out.
All right then. And after all of you are done doing that, if you enjoyed this show, be sure to like and subscribe and all that. Um, and if for some unfathomable reason you want to give me some money after you're done buying this game when it eventually is released, you can go to patreon.com/, the Pumpkin Copter Cast, where for as little as $1 a month, you could submit questions for me to use in future interviews. And if you like slightly more coherent ramblings from me, you can go to your podcast platform of choice for Gotta Recap 'em All, where I and my various co hosts are, meticulously watching and recapping every single episode of the Pokemon anime. The ones that gave kids seizures? Yeah. The one where people kept pointing guns at Ash and almost shooting him? Yeah. All that good stuff. And yeah, check out Fantastic Findings on Steam, like I said before. And yeah, this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast. And until next time, have a gourd day, everyone.